A woman stood in the
Please,
rain,
someone help
clutching her
us.
trembling German shepherd puppy, begging strangers to take him
so
because she
cold.
knew what was coming next. Her husband had made his threat clear. The dog dies tonight, or she does. But every person walked past her desperate tears until one man stopped. He wasn't just any passerby, he was Delta Force. And when he saw the bruises on her arms and the terror in her eyes, he made a decision that would change everything. You're both coming home with me. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. The rain fell in sheets over Richmond, Virginia, turning the parking lot of the Riverside Shopping Center into a maze of puddles and shadows. It was the kind of November evening that drove people indoors. But there, in front of the grocery store, stood a sight that would haunt anyone who saw it. A woman in her late 20s, her clothes soaked through, her frame shaking from cold and fear. And in her arms, a German shepherd puppy, equally drenched, equally terrified. The rain came down in sheets that November evening, the kind of cold, relentless downpour that turned the world grey and sent everyone running for shelter. The parking lot of Riverside Shopping Center in Richmond, Virginia, had emptied fast. Cars splashed through puddles, headlights cutting through the gloom as people hurried to get home, to get dry, to get away from the miserable weather. But there, right in front of the grocery store entrance, stood a woman who wasn't going anywhere. Her name was Elena Martinez, though no one stopping to grab milk or bread that evening knew that. What they saw was a soaked figure in a thin jacket, jeans that clung to her legs, dark hair plastered to her face. What they saw was someone they wanted to avoid, someone whose presence made them uncomfortable, someone they could pretend not to notice if they just walked a little faster. In her arms, she held a German shepherd puppy. He couldn't have been more than 3 months old, all oversized paws and floppy ears, shivering against her chest. She had wrapped him in her own cardigan, the only dry thing she had left, and she held him like he was the most precious thing in the world. Because to her, he was. "Please," she said to a woman in yoga pants pushing a cart toward a silver SUV. "Please, can you take him? He's a good puppy. He's so good. I just need someone to take him." The woman didn't even slow down. She hit her key fob, unloaded her groceries, and drove away without a single word. Elena's voice cracked. "Please, someone, anyone." A couple in matching rain jackets walked past, heads down, pretending they didn't hear. An elderly man gave her a sympathetic look, but shook his head and kept moving. A teenager with headphones in didn't even register her existence. She'd been standing there for 40 minutes. 40 minutes of rejection, of people looking at her like she was crazy, like she was dangerous, like she was someone else's problem. Her hands were numb. The puppy, Scout, had stopped shivering and gone eerily still in her arms, which terrified her even more. The rain had washed away most of her makeup. That was the problem, really, because now, under the harsh, fluorescent lights of the store entrance, you could see them, the bruises. There was a fading yellow-green one along her right cheekbone, another, darker and fresher, on her left forearm where fingers had gripped too hard, a split in her lower lip that was trying to heal. People saw those marks and they made calculations. Trouble. Drama. Not my business. They walked faster. Elena checked her phone with shaking hands. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb of damage from when Marcus had thrown it against the kitchen wall last week. But it still worked enough to show her the time. 8:37 p.m. She had less than 23 minutes. Her breath came faster, panic rising in her chest like floodwater. She turned to a man in a business suit, Please, sir, please. I just need you to take my dog. I'll give you everything. His food, his papers, his vet records. He's healthy. He's perfect. Please." The man's eyes flickered to her face, to the bruises, to the desperate wildness in her voice. "I'm sorry, I can't help you." He practically ran to his car. Elena's knees felt weak. Scout whimpered softly against her chest, and she buried her face in his damp fur for just a moment, breathing in that puppy smell that somehow still cut through the rain and the fear. "I'm trying to save you," she whispered to him. "Please understand. I'm trying to save you." Because here's what she knew, what Marcus had made crystal clear when she'd come home that afternoon to find him standing in the living room with that cold smile on his face. "The dog goes tonight," he'd said. His voice was calm, controlled. That was the worst part. Marcus never yelled. He didn't have to. "I've been patient, Elena. I've been more than patient. But I'm done with this animal destroying my house. Done with you caring more about it than about me." "He's just a puppy," she'd said, hating how small her voice sounded. "He's still learning. I'll work harder with him. 9 p.m. Marcus interrupted. "Either you take it somewhere and get rid of it, or I will. And Elena, you know I don't do things halfway. Do you understand what I'm saying?" She understood. God, she understood perfectly. She'd seen what Marcus did to things that displeased him. The Christmas ornament her mother had sent from Mexico, smashed because she'd hung it in the wrong spot. Her laptop, destroyed because she'd forgotten to log out of her email. Her phone, thrown because she'd laughed too loud on a call with her sister. If Marcus took care of Scout, the puppy wouldn't survive the night. So she'd grabbed Scout and run. Just run. No plan, no destination, just the desperate hope that if she could find someone, anyone, to take him, at least he'd be safe. At least she'd have saved one thing. But here she was, 23 minutes from deadline, and no one would help. "Please." Her voice was breaking now, raw with desperation. "Please, someone, I'm begging you." A truck pulled into the parking lot. Not fast like the others, rushing to get in and out. Slow, deliberate. It was an older Ford F-150, dark blue, with a coating of road salt on the fenders. It parked 3 spaces away from where she stood, and the engine cut off. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened, and a man stepped out into the rain. He was tall, maybe 6'1", and with broad shoulders and the kind of posture that spoke of military training, even before you noticed the regulation haircut or the way his eyes swept the parking lot in a practiced assessment. He wore jeans, boots, and a plain grey jacket. He didn't hurry toward the store entrance like everyone else. Instead, he stopped, standing in the rain, looking directly at her. Really looking. Not the quick glance people give before they look away. Actually seeing her. Jack Morrison had been Delta Force for 8 years. He was home on leave, just trying to grab supplies before the storm got worse, and he was stuck in his apartment for the weekend. He'd been thinking about whether he had enough coffee, whether he should grab something for dinner. Nothing important. And then he saw her. His training kicked in automatically. Threat assessment. Environmental scan. Subject evaluation. Female, late 20s. Inadequate clothing for weather conditions, visible injuries. Posture indicated extreme stress. Holding something, protective stance. No visible immediate threats in the vicinity, but her behavior suggested imminent danger. He'd seen that look before. Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq. That specific combination of desperation and resignation. The look of someone who'd already decided they were going to die, but was trying to save someone else first. He He walked toward her. Elena saw him coming and felt a spike of hope and fear all at once. He was big, capable-looking, the kind of man who could protect a puppy, but also the kind of man who might be dangerous. She'd learned to be afraid of capable men. "Ma'am," he said when he was close enough. His voice was deep, calm. "Are you okay?" The kindness in the question broke something in her. "Please," she said, and tears mixed with the rain on her face. "Please, can you take my puppy? I don't have much time. I need someone to take him. He's good. He's so good. I have all his things in my car. His food, his bed, everything. Please!" Jack's eyes moved over her face, cataloguing the injuries with professional detachment, even as anger kindled in his gut. Those weren't accident bruises. Those were inflicted, deliberately. "Why do you need to give him away?" he asked quietly. Elena's hands tightened on Scout. I can't keep him. I need someone to take him, tonight, right now, please." "Who hurt you?" The question was so direct, so unexpected, that Elena actually flinched. I fell. I'm clumsy. That doesn't matter. The puppy, ma'am." Jack's voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath it now. "I'm not going to take your dog. Not until you tell me what's really happening here." Elena felt panic clawing at her throat. She checked her phone again. 8:41. "I don't have time. Please, you don't understand. If someone doesn't take him, my husband will—" She stopped, the words choking her. "Your husband will what?" She couldn't say it, couldn't make herself speak the words. Instead, she just stood there, shaking, clutching Scout, the seconds ticking away. Jack made a decision. "Okay, here's what's going to happen. You and the puppy are going to get in my truck. We're going to get out of this rain, and then you're going to tell me exactly what's going on. Can you do that?" Elena shook her head frantically. No, I can't. I just need you to take him. Please, just take him and go, before what?" Jack pressed. "Before your husband shows up?" As if summoned by the words, headlights swept across the parking lot. A black Mercedes sedan, gleaming even in the rain, pulled in fast and parked at an angle, blocking 2 spaces. Arrogant, entitled. Elena's entire body went rigid. The color drained from her face. "No," she breathed. No, he wasn't supposed to. I told him I was at the store. He wasn't supposed to check." The Mercedes door opened. The man who stepped out was everything Jack expected and worse. Late 30s, expensive haircut, designer coat that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He had the kind of face that looked good in hospital promotional materials, trustworthy and handsome. But his eyes, as they locked onto Elena, were ice cold. "Elena." His voice carried across the parking lot, warm and concerned, like a devoted husband worried about his wife. "Sweetheart, what are you doing out here? You're soaked. Come on, let's get you home." He walked toward them with confident strides, and Jack felt Elena actually try to move backward, pressing against his truck. Marcus Kane's eyes shifted to Jack, sizing him up. "Thank you for staying with her," he said smoothly. "My wife, she gets confused sometimes. The medication, you know. I'm Dr. Marcus Kane." He extended a hand that Jack didn't take. "She doesn't look confused to me," Jack said evenly. "She looks terrified." Marcus's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in his eyes. Annoyance. "I appreciate your concern, but this is a private family matter. Elena, give me the dog." "No." The word came out of Elena as barely a whisper. "Elena." Marcus's voice dropped lower, taking on an edge that probably no one else would catch. But Jack heard it. The threat. The promise. "We talked about this. Give me the dog." Elena was shaking so hard now that Scout squirmed in her arms. She looked at Jack, and in her eyes was a desperate, silent plea. Jack stepped slightly to the side, positioning himself between Elena and Marcus. It wasn't aggressive. He didn't raise his voice or square up. He just moved, and suddenly the geometry of the situation had changed. "Dr. Kane," Jack said quietly, "I think your wife needs a minute." Marcus's facade cracked just a little. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who's not moving." For a long moment they stood there in the rain. Marcus calculating, trying to figure out his play. Jack utterly still, every muscle relaxed but ready. Elena behind him, clutching Scout like a lifeline. Marcus was smart enough to recognize real danger when he saw it. This wasn't some minimum wage employee he could intimidate or some friend of Elena's he could manipulate. This was something else. Someone trained. Someone who wouldn't back down. He forced his smile back into place. "Elena, you're making a scene. This man doesn't need to be dragged into our personal business." He looked at Jack. "She has a psychiatric condition, borderline personality disorder. She's supposed to be on medication, but she stops taking it. And then she does things like this. Creates drama, makes accusations." "That's not true," Elena said, but her voice was so quiet, so defeated that it barely registered. "I have her medical records," Marcus continued. "I'm her husband and her physician. I know what's best for her care. Now, Elena, we're going home. If you won't give me the dog, fine. We'll deal with that later. But you need to come with me, now." He reached for her arm. Jack's hand caught Marcus's wrist. Not rough, not violent, just absolutely immovable. "Don't," Jack said. "One word. Flat. Final." Marcus stared at his captured wrist, then up at Jack's face. For the first time, real emotion showed through. Rage. The kind of rage that came from a man who was used to total control and had just had that control challenged. "You're assaulting me," Marcus said, his voice tight. "I could have you arrested." "Go ahead, call the police." Jack released his wrist. "We'll wait right here, all of us. Let them sort it out." It was a gamble. Jack knew that, because men like Marcus Kane had connections, had power, had lawyers. A domestic dispute, a wife with a documented psychiatric history, a strange man interfering, it could go sideways fast. But he also knew that men like Marcus operated in shadow. They relied on silence, on shame, on their victims being too scared to speak up. The last thing Marcus wanted was official attention, questions, a public scene. Marcus's jaw clenched. He looked at Elena, and Jack saw it, the promise in that look. "This isn't over. You'll pay for this." "Fine," Marcus said. "Elena, you want to stay out in the rain with your dog and this stranger. That's your choice. But when you come home, and you will come home, remember that you made this choice. Remember what happens to things that embarrass me." He turned and walked back to his Mercedes, every step precisely controlled. The engine purred to life, and he sat there for a moment, just watching them. Then he backed up and drove away, tail lights disappearing into the rain. The moment he was gone, Elena's legs gave out. She would have collapsed if Jack hadn't caught her, one arm supporting her weight while she still clutched Scout with desperate strength. "I shouldn't have," she gasped. "Oh God, I shouldn't have. You don't know what he'll do. You don't know." "Hey, look at me." Jack waited until her terrified eyes met his. "You're not going back there tonight, okay? Not tonight. We're going to figure this out, but right now, you and that puppy are getting somewhere safe and warm. Can you walk to my truck?" Elena nodded numbly. Scout, sensing the shift in tension, licked her chin with his tiny pink tongue. Jack helped her into the passenger seat of his truck, then went back and grabbed the bags from her car that she pointed out, the puppy supplies she'd packed in her desperate plan to give Scout away. He loaded them in the back and climbed into the driver's seat. The heater hummed to life. The rain drummed on the roof. Elena sat there shivering, Scout now in her lap, both of them looking like drowned refugees from some war zone. Which, Jack thought, wasn't that far from the truth. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Elena Martinez." "I'm Jack Morrison, and you did the right thing, Elena. You stood up to him. That took real courage." She laughed, a broken sound. "Courage? I was trying to give away my dog to a stranger because I was too weak to protect him myself. That's not courage. You were trying to save something you love. That's exactly what courage is." Jack put the truck in gear. "Now, I'm going to take you somewhere safe, and then we're going to talk about what happens next, okay?" Elena closed her eyes, tears finally falling freely now that she wasn't trying to hold everything together. "He's going to kill me. When I go back, he's going to kill me." "You're not going back," Jack said. "Not if I have anything to say about it." And as he pulled out of the parking lot, heading toward his apartment on the other side of the city, Jack Morrison made a silent promise. He'd spent 8 years protecting strangers in foreign countries. Tonight, he was going to protect one woman and her puppy right here at home. Whatever it took. Jack's apartment was on the 4th floor of a nondescript building in a quiet part of Richmond. Nothing fancy. Just a one-bedroom place that served as a landing spot between deployments. But it was secure. Reinforced door. Good sight lines. And most importantly, it was somewhere Marcus Kane didn't know about. Elena sat on his couch, wrapped in a blanket, finally starting to stop shivering. Scout was curled up on a towel by the radiator, exhausted from fear and cold, his little sides rising and falling in the deep sleep that only puppies can achieve. She watched him like she was afraid he might disappear. Jack handed her a mug of hot tea. "When's the last time you ate?" Elena had to think about it. "Yesterday. Maybe. I don't remember." He went to the kitchen without another word and started pulling things from the refrigerator. Eggs, bread, cheese. Simple things. He wasn't much of a cook, but he could manage scrambled eggs and toast. While he cooked, he was making calculations. Tactical assessments. This wasn't a firefight in Kandahar, but the principles were the same. Assess the threat. Protect the asset. Develop a strategy. Execute. The threat was Marcus Kane. Prominent surgeon. Money, connections, legal authority as her husband. And most dangerous of all, a documented pattern of control masked as concern. The asset was Elena. Physically injured, psychologically traumatized, legally vulnerable, but alive, still fighting even if she didn't know it yet. The strategy? That was the part he was still working on. He brought her the food and sat across from her in the armchair. "I eat first, then we talk." Elena picked at the eggs. After the first bite, though, something shifted. Hunger took over. She ate like someone who hadn't had a real meal in days, which, Jack suspected, was probably accurate. Men like Marcus controlled everything. Food, money, access. It was all part of the cage. When she finished, she set the plate down and pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "I don't understand why you're helping me. You don't know me. Don't need to know you need help. Most people just walked away. I'm not most people." Jack leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Elena, I need you to tell me everything. How long has he been hurting you? Has he ever put you in the hospital? Does anyone else know what's going on?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then the words started coming, slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. She'd met Marcus 3 years ago. He was charming, successful. He swept her off her feet with expensive dinners and weekend trips. Her family in Mexico had been worried about how fast things moved, but she'd been so sure. He seemed perfect. The wedding was 6 months after they met. Small ceremony, just a few people. Marcus said he preferred intimate gatherings. What she didn't realize then was that he was already isolating her, cutting her off from anyone who might question him. The first time he hit her was 4 months into the marriage. She'd laughed too loud at something a colleague said at a hospital fundraiser. Marcus smiled through the whole event, played the perfect husband. Then in the car, on the way home, he backhanded her across the face so hard her ears rang. "I'm sorry," he'd said afterward, holding her while she cried. "I'm so sorry. It's just seeing other men look at you like that, I couldn't stand it. I love you too much." "It won't happen again." But it did happen again, and again, each time with a reason, each time with an apology, each time with a promise that if she just tried harder, understood him better, loved him more, it would stop. He controlled her phone, monitored her emails. She wasn't allowed to work, wasn't allowed to see friends without his permission, which he never gave. Her family in Mexico, she hadn't spoken to them in almost 2 years. Marcus said they were a bad influence, said they didn't understand their relationship, said it was better if she focused on being a good wife instead of dwelling on the past. 6 months ago, she'd tried to leave, packed a bag while he was at the hospital, made it as far as a women's shelter downtown. Marcus found her within 8 hours. He came with 2 police officers, Elena said, her voice hollow. He had papers from a psychiatrist, someone he worked with at the hospital. They said I was having a psychotic break, that I was a danger to myself. He had me committed to a psychiatric facility for 72 hours. Jack's hands clenched into fists. He kept his voice level. "What happened in the facility?" "They evaluated me. I tried to tell them the truth, but Marcus had already talked to them. He's a respected surgeon. He had medical records showing I'd been erratic, unstable, records I'd never seen before. The doctors believed him. They released me back to his care with a recommendation for medication and therapy." Therapy he controlled. Everything he controls. Elena's voice broke. "I tried again 2 months later. Same thing happened, except at this time he was angry. Really angry. He said if I ever tried to leave again, he'd make sure I was permanently committed. He has friends, psychiatrists who owe him favors. He said he could make it happen, and no one would question it." "So you stopped trying?" "What choice did I have?" Tears streamed down her face. "And then, 3 months ago, I found Scout. Someone had dumped him in a box behind a grocery store. He was so small, so scared. And Marcus was at a conference, so I brought him home. I thought maybe if I had something to care for, something that needed me, I could survive this." But Marcus came home. He hated Scout from the moment he saw him, said the dog was dirty, loud, disruptive. But I begged. I promised I'd keep Scout out of his way, train him perfectly, make sure Marcus never had to deal with him. And for a while, Marcus allowed it. I think because he liked seeing me have something I loved that he could threaten to take away. And today? Elena's face crumpled. Today he said he was done. That Scout had chewed one of his shoes, and it was the last straw. He gave me until 9 p.m. to get rid of him, or he'd do it himself. And I knew what that meant. I knew he'd hurt him, kill him, just to hurt me. So I ran. I thought if I could find someone to take Scout, at least he'd be safe. At least I'd have saved something. Jack was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she'd told him. He'd seen evil before, seen what human beings were capable of doing to each other. But there was something particularly insidious about this. The systematic destruction of another person's will, their identity, their hope, all while maintaining a respectable facade. And he pulled out his phone. "Who are you calling?" Elena asked, panic creeping into her voice. "Someone I trust." The phone rang twice before a woman's voice answered. "Jack Morrison, this better be important. I'm in the middle of dinner. Sarah, I need you." There was a pause. Detective Sarah Chen had known Jack for 5 years. They'd met at a veterans support group. She was former Army MP turned Richmond PD, specializing in domestic violence and sex crimes. They'd worked together before on cases that fell in the grey areas between military and civilian jurisdiction. She heard something in his voice. "Where are you?" He gave her the address. "How fast can you get here?" 20 minutes. Sarah Chen arrived in 18. She was a compact woman in her early 40s, eye with sharp eyes and the kind of presence that commanded respect without demanding it. She listened while Elena told her story again, taking notes, asking careful questions. Then she photographed Elena's injuries with a professional camera, documenting every bruise, every mark. "Okay," Sarah said when she was done. "Here's where we are. Legally, this is complicated. Marcus is your husband. You're living in his house, and he's built a paper trail showing psychiatric instability." Elena's face fell. "But," Sarah continued, "I've seen this pattern before. Successful men using their positions to abuse with impunity. It's harder to prosecute, but it's not impossible. We just have to be smart about it." "How smart?" Jack asked. "We need to document everything. Medical records, financial records. Any communication that shows a pattern of control and abuse. We need witnesses if there are any. We need to build a case so solid that his reputation won't matter." "I don't have anything," Elena said. "He controls everything. My phone, my email. I don't even have access to our bank accounts." Sarah exchanged a look with Jack. "Do you want to press charges? Tonight?" Elena hesitated. "What happens if I do?" "I file a report. We try to get an emergency protective order. But, Elena, you need to understand. Marcus has resources. He'll lawyer up immediately. He'll use the psychiatric history. He'll paint you as unstable, as making false accusations. It's going to get ugly." "And if I don't press charges?" "Then legally you're still his wife. You're still living in his house. And if you don't go back, he can report you as missing. He can use the same psychiatric angle to say you need to be found and returned for your own safety." It was a trap. Every direction was a trap. Jack stood up. "Sarah, can I talk to you in the kitchen for a minute?" They left Elena on the couch and spoke in low voices. "What are you thinking?" Sarah asked. "I'm thinking we need time. Time to build the case. Time to get her stable. Time to gather evidence. Time we don't have. Jack, you can't just keep her here. That's technically harboring. And if Marcus files a missing persons report, he won't." "How do you know?" "Because I saw him tonight. Saw the way he operated. He's not going to involve the police unless he has to. He wants control, and official attention means losing control. He'll try to handle this privately first." Sarah rubbed her temples. "This is messy, Jack." "I know. But we can't send her back there." "I'm not suggesting we do." Sarah pulled out her phone. "Let me make some calls. I have a friend at the DA's office who specializes in domestic violence cases, and I know a lawyer who does pro bono work for abuse survivors. We'll figure this out." But the universe had other plans. At midnight, Jack's phone rang. It was Sarah. "We have a problem. Marcus filed a missing persons report 2 hours ago, and it gets worse. He filed for an emergency psychiatric hold, claiming Elena is off her medication and a danger to herself. There's a bolo out for her. Every cop in the city is looking for her. Jack looked at Elena, who had finally fallen asleep on the couch, Scout curled up next to her. What do we do? Honestly, we might not have a choice. If they find her here, they'll execute the hold. She'll be taken to a psychiatric facility, evaluated, and most likely released back to Marcus's care. And Jack, if you're found harboring her after a bolo has been issued, you could be charged with obstruction. I'm not letting them take her. Jack, Sarah, listen to me. You didn't see her in that parking lot. You didn't see what she was willing to do to save that puppy. She was begging strangers to take him because she knew her husband was going to kill him. She's not crazy. She's terrorized. And if we send her back into that system, into his control, we might as well kill her ourselves. Sarah was quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Okay, here's what we're going to do. Tomorrow morning, first thing, you bring her to the station, voluntarily. We do this on our terms, not theirs. We have a lawyer present. We have her examined by an independent psychiatrist, not one of Marcus's friends, and we fight the hold. And if we lose, then we keep fighting. But Jack, this is the best play we have. If you run, if you hide her, Marcus wins. He gets to control the narrative. This way, we force it into the light. Jack knew she was right. But God, it felt wrong. It felt like surrender. The next morning came too fast. Elena woke up disoriented, then remembered where she was. Jack had already arranged everything. Sarah had a lawyer waiting at the station. A real one, not a public defender. Someone who specialized in these cases. I'm scared, Elena said as they drove to the police station. I know, but Sarah's good at her job, and you're not alone anymore. That's what Marcus counted on. You being alone. But you're not. The station was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights, scuffed floors, the smell of bad coffee and bureaucracy. Sarah met them at the entrance with a woman in a sharp suit. The lawyer, Amanda Price, had the kind of face that had fought 1,000 battles and wasn't tired yet. Elena, Amanda said, shaking her hand. I've reviewed your case. We're going to get you through this. What followed was the longest 6 hours of Elena's life. Interviews, evaluations. Marcus showed up with his lawyers, expensive suits, and practiced sympathy. He played his part perfectly. The concerned husband, the dedicated physician, so worried about his unstable wife. The psychiatric evaluator was a woman in her 60s, Dr. Patricia Morse. She spent 2 hours with Elena, just talking. Really talking, not leading questions, not judgment, just listening. When she came out, she spoke to the judge who had been called in for the emergency hearing. Your Honor, I find no evidence that Ms. Martinez is a danger to herself or others. I find no evidence of psychosis or delusional thinking. What I do find is consistent testimony about long-term domestic abuse and a pattern of coercive control. Marcus's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, Dr. Morse isn't familiar with my client's wife's history. Dr. Kane has extensive documentation. Documentation I've reviewed. Dr. Morse interrupted. Documentation that frankly looks like it was created to discredit her. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know the difference between mental illness and trauma. The judge, an older woman with tired eyes, looked from Marcus to Elena. I'm denying the psychiatric hold. However, given the circumstances and the competing claims, I'm ordering a temporary separation. Ms. Martinez will remain in protective custody while we investigate both parties. Dr. Kane, you're ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from your wife pending further hearings. Marcus's face went white, then red. Your Honor, this is outrageous. My wife needs medical care. Your wife will receive care from independent providers, not ones you have relationships with. This hearing is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Elena broke down. Not from sadness, from relief, from the overwhelming realization that someone had finally believed her. Jack stood beside her, solid and steady. You did good in there. What happens now? She asked. Now, Sarah said, we build the case. And Elena, we're going to need your help. Anything you can remember, or anywhere he might have kept records, anything that can prove what he's been doing. Elena looked up, and for the first time in years there was something in her eyes that looked like hope. I might know something. Marcus has a home office. He keeps it locked. But I saw him open it once. There's a safe. I don't know the combination, but I know it's there. Amanda Price smiled. It was not a nice smile. Then we get a warrant. We look at his financials. We talk to his colleagues. We find out what Dr. Marcus Kane doesn't want anyone to know. The war wasn't over. They'd won a battle, but Marcus Kane wasn't the type to go down easily. And as Jack watched Elena finally breathe freely for the first time since he'd met her, he made another promise. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. The investigation into Marcus Kane started quietly, carefully. Detective Sarah Chen knew they were dealing with a man who had spent years building an armor of respectability, and that armor wouldn't crack easily. But here's the thing about men like Marcus. They always believed they were smarter than everyone else. And that arrogance, that absolute certainty that they'd never get caught, that's what made them sloppy. It started with the financials. Amanda Price, the lawyer, filed a motion for full financial disclosure as part of the separation proceedings. Standard procedure in a divorce case. Marcus's lawyers fought it, of course, but the judge ruled in their favor. Within a week, they had access to 3 years of bank statements, credit card records, and investment accounts. When Sarah sat in Jack's apartment going through the documents spread across his kitchen table, Elena was there too, Scout sleeping in her lap, grown now into a gangly adolescent dog, all long legs and oversized paws. She'd been staying in a women's shelter for the past 2 weeks, safe but temporary. Jack visited every day, bringing food, checking in, making sure she knew she wasn't alone. Look at this, Sarah said, tapping a printout. Marcus's salary from the hospital is substantial, $400,000 a year. But look at these deposits. Over the past 18 months, there are irregular cash deposits totaling almost $200,000. 10,000 here, 15,000 there. Never enough to trigger automatic reporting, but consistent. Where's it coming from? Jack asked. That's what we need to find out. Sarah pulled up another document. And here's something else. Medical supply orders to his home address. Surgical equipment, pharmaceuticals. Why would a cardiovascular surgeon need that kind of equipment at home? Elena leaned forward, her brow furrowed. He has a home office, but it's not set up for any kind of medical procedures. At least, not that I ever saw. He always said it was just paperwork, records, research. What if it's not at the house? Jack said quietly. What if he has somewhere else? Sarah's eyes narrowed. A second location, somewhere he could work without oversight. She grabbed her phone and made a call. Hey, it's Chen. I need property records for Marcus Kane. Everything in his name or any LLCs he's associated with. Yeah, I'll wait. The answer came back in 10 minutes. Marcus owned the house where Elena had lived. But there was also a commercial property, a small medical office building on the outskirts of the city. It was listed under an LLC called Apex Medical Consulting. I've never heard of that, Elena said. He never mentioned any outside practice. Sarah was already pulling up more records. The LLC was formed 3 years ago, same time you got married. It's registered as a consulting firm for medical device training. She looked up. What if it's not consulting? What if he's running an unlicensed clinic? Jack understood immediately. Cash payments, no insurance records, no official documentation, people who can't go to regular hospitals. Or won't? Sarah added. Criminals, undocumented immigrants, people desperate enough to pay cash for medical procedures without questions. It was illegal. Absolutely illegal. And if they could prove it, Marcus Kane's perfect reputation would shatter like glass. But they needed evidence, and evidence meant getting inside that building. Sarah went to a judge she trusted with a warrant request. But here's where Marcus's connections finally paid off for him. The request was denied. Insufficient cause. The judge, an old colleague of Marcus's from some hospital board, said that property records and financial irregularities weren't enough to justify a search of a licensed physician's private office. They hit a wall. That's when Jack made a decision. I'm going in. Sarah's head snapped up. Jack, no, that's breaking and entering. Anything you find would be inadmissible, and you could be arrested. I'm not talking about an official investigation. I'm talking about reconnaissance. We need to know what's in there. Once we know, we can figure out how to get it legally. Jack, Sarah, he tried to kill her. Jack's voice was hard. Maybe not with his hands, but he was killing her piece by piece. And now we know he's doing something illegal, something dangerous. If we wait, if we play by rules that he's already figured out how to manipulate, he wins. People like him always win. Elena was looking at him with wide eyes. You'd do that? Risk arrest for me? I'd do it because it's right. The building that housed Apex Medical Consulting was in an industrial area, surrounded by warehouses and auto repair shops, the kind of place where no one asked questions. Jack did surveillance for 2 days, watching the patterns. Marcus showed up 3 nights a week, always after dark, always alone. He'd stay for 2 to 3 hours. I'd then leave. On the 3rd night, Jack went in. He'd done hundreds of infiltrations during his time in Delta Force. This was easier than most. The security system was basic, meant to deter casual burglars, not trained operatives. He was inside in under 3 minutes. The front area looked legitimate. Reception desk, waiting area, medical diplomas on the wall. But the back rooms, that's where the truth lived. Jack moved through with a small flashlight and his phone camera, documenting everything. The first room was a surgical suite. Not hospital grade, but close. Equipped for serious procedures. The second room was storage. Pharmaceuticals, opioids, anesthetics, controlled substances that should have been impossible for a private physician to stockpile. And then he found the office. Inside the locked filing cabinet, using picks he'd learned to use in a dozen different countries, were patient files. Except these weren't normal patient files. No insurance information, no social security numbers. Just first names, dates, procedures, and cash amounts. Jack photographed everything. Page after page. A man named Carlos. Gunshot wound repair. $15,000. A woman named Yuki. Emergency cesarean section. $20,000. On and on. Dozens of cases over 2 years. Marcus Kane was running an underground clinic, treating people who couldn't or wouldn't go to hospitals. Some of them probably desperate and innocent. Others Jack suspected were criminals who couldn't risk official medical records. But it was the last file that made Jack's blood run cold. It was labeled simply E.M. Elena Martinez. Inside were detailed medical records. But not treatment records, psychiatric evaluations, all written by Marcus himself, documenting her supposed mental illness, her instability, her danger to herself. Records that had never been created during actual appointments because there had never been actual appointments. Marcus had fabricated everything, created an entire false psychiatric history to use as a weapon against her. There was more. Notes about management strategies, how to isolate her, how to control her access to money, communication, and freedom. It was a blueprint for abuse, written in clinical language, as if she were a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. Jack felt sick, but he kept photographing. Every page, every piece of evidence. He was on the last file when he heard it. A car door slamming outside. His training kicked in instantly. And he checked his watch. Marcus wasn't supposed to be here tonight. He pocketed the phone, closed the filing cabinet, and moved silently to the window. The black Mercedes was in the parking lot. Marcus was here, and he wasn't alone. 2 other men got out of the car with him. They looked like hired muscle. Not hospital colleagues, security, enforcers. Jack assessed his options. Front door was out. They were walking toward it now. Back door would trigger an alarm he'd bypassed on the way in. Window was possible, but he was on the 2nd floor. He made his decision. He opened the window, hung from the ledge, and dropped. It was a 12-foot fall. He landed in a crouch, absorbing the impact through his legs, and rolled into the shadow of a dumpster. Above him, lights flicked on in the office. He heard Marcus's voice, muffled but angry. "Someone's been in here. Check everything, everything!" Jack didn't wait. He moved through the shadows, quick and silent, reaching his truck 3 blocks away. His heart was pounding, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from the satisfaction of a mission completed. He had everything they needed. The next morning, Sarah Chen sat in her captain's office with the photos Jack had taken. She'd spent all night going through them, verifying, cross-referencing. Now she needed official support. Captain Morris was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s who'd worked his way up from beat cop to department head. He listened while Sarah laid out the case, the financial records, the property, the underground clinic, the fabricated psychiatric records. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You know Marcus Kane has friends in this department. I'd right? You know he plays golf with the deputy chief?" "I know, sir." "You know that if we go after him and miss, if anything in this case falls apart, it'll be our heads?" "I know that too." Morris looked at the photos again. His jaw tightened. "My daughter was in an abusive relationship once. Her husband was a lawyer, respectable, successful. Everyone loved him. She tried to leave 3 times. Each time he talked his way out of it, made her look crazy, made her doubt herself." He looked up at Sarah. "The 4th time she didn't leave. She shot him. Self-defense, but she still did 2 years because his lawyer friends made sure the case went a certain way." "Sir, I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be thorough. Because we're going after him. All of it, the clinic, the fraud, the abuse, everything." He stood up. "I'll get you a warrant. A real one. And I'll make sure it goes to a judge who isn't in Kane's pocket. We're going to burn his whole operation down." The raid happened 3 days later. 5 a.m., multiple teams. They hit both locations simultaneously, Marcus's house and the medical office. Sarah led the team at the clinic. What they found was even worse than Jack's photos had shown. They found patient records. They found evidence of procedures performed without proper licensing. They found controlled substances that Marcus had no legal right to possess. And in his office computer, encrypted but not encrypted well enough, they found financial records showing payments to multiple people. Hush money, bribes, payoffs. Marcus Kane had built an empire of corruption, and it was all crashing down. At his house, they found the Home Office Elena had mentioned. The safe that had always been locked. Inside were more records, more evidence, and something else. A file on Elena's mother. Elena's mother had died 6 months before Elena tried to leave the first time. She'd been visiting from Mexico. The official cause of death was a heart attack. Sudden, unexpected. But here in Marcus's safe were medical records showing he'd been treating her for a minor condition, prescribing medication. Sarah brought in a forensic medical examiner to review the records. The conclusion was chilling. The medication Marcus had prescribed, in the dosages he'd given, would have caused the exact type of cardiac event that killed Elena's mother. It couldn't be proven definitively, not without exhuming the body. But it was enough to raise serious questions. Marcus Kane hadn't just been abusing his wife. He might have murdered her mother. The arrest happened at the hospital. Marcus was in the middle of a consultation when police walked into his office. He tried to smile, tried to use his charm, tried to act like this was all a misunderstanding. But Sarah had 15 charges ready. Practicing medicine without a license, possession of controlled substances, medical fraud, insurance fraud, and domestic violence, plus a dozen counts related to the underground clinic. The trial took 4 months. Marcus's lawyers were good. They fought every piece of evidence. They tried to discredit Elena, tried to paint her as unstable, vindictive, a scorned wife making false accusations. But here's the thing. They couldn't explain away the clinic, couldn't explain the patient records, the cash payments, the controlled substances, and they couldn't explain the fabricated psychiatric records. Marcus had documented his own crime, so confident in his control that he'd never imagined anyone would see those files. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Marcus Kane was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His medical license was permanently revoked. His assets were seized. The man who had controlled every aspect of Elena's life now had no control at all. 6 months later, Jack stood in the parking lot of a small house on the outskirts of Richmond. It was a modest place. 2 bedrooms, a yard. Nothing fancy. But it was Elena's, bought with the settlement money from the divorce, from the seizure of Marcus's assets, from the compensation for years of documented abuse. Elena opened the door, and Scout, now fully grown, bounded out. He was a beautiful dog, 90 pounds of muscle and loyalty. He ran to Jack, tail wagging, remembering the man who'd saved him and his owner on that rainy night. Elena followed, and she looked different. Her hair was longer. She'd gained healthy weight. But more than that, her eyes were different. The haunted look was gone, replaced by something quiet and strong. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I wanted you to see it, the house, what you helped make possible." Jack smiled. "You did this. You found the courage to stand up, to fight back." "I found the courage because you showed me I wasn't alone." She gestured to the house. "Come in. I want to show you something." Inside, the house was warm and welcoming, but it was the back room that made Jack stop. It was an office, and on the walls were photos. Women, dozens of them, different ages, different backgrounds, all smiling. "I started a foundation," Elena said, "for domestic violence survivors. We help them find legal representation, safe housing, support. Everything I didn't have until you stopped in that parking lot." She pointed to one photo. "That's Maria. Her husband put her in the hospital twice. We helped her get out. She's safe now." Another photo. "That's Kim. Her partner controlled every dollar she made. We helped her build independence. Jack looked at the photos, at the lives that had been saved, rebuilt, given hope. You did all this, he said quietly. We did this. You, Sarah, Amanda, everyone who believed me when the world said I was crazy. Elena picked up Scout's leash. And this guy, the puppy I was ready to give away to save, he reminds me every day that even in the darkest moments, our love is worth fighting for. They walked outside together, Scout trotting happily between them. The sun was setting over Richmond, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. What about you? Elena asked. Are you going back? To Delta Force? Jack had been thinking about that a lot lately. Maybe, eventually, but right now I think I'm needed here. Sarah's been asking me to consult on some cases, situations where someone with my particular skills might help. Elena smiled. Helping people who can't help themselves. Something like that. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching Scout chase a butterfly across the yard. Two survivors in their own ways. Two people who'd found each other on the worst night and had helped each other find a way forward. You know, Elena said softly. That night in the rain, I thought my life was over. I thought the best I could do was save Scout. I never imagined I'd save myself. You always had that strength, Jack said. You just needed someone to remind you it was there. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elena whispered a promise to herself, to Scout, and to every woman whose photo hung on her office wall. Never again. We're never going back to the darkness. Only forward. Only into the light. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear that there's always hope, even in the darkest moments. Subscribe for more stories of courage and resilience. And if you believe that one person choosing to help can change everything, type Amen in the comments below. May you always have the courage to stop when someone needs help, and may you never walk past someone's pain. God bless you all.